Had him on 3 times before. He and 2 other guys, crew of 3 total, hit 2.3 million in revenue, and it is very impressive. Hey, welcome back to the Owner Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gray. In this episode, I'm hosting one of my friends, Brock Peel. He's been on the show 3 or 4 times at this point, and the reason I keep bringing him on is because the guy is a great business owner. He knows how to focus, and he knows how to crank out jobs. So there is so much that I can learn from Brock, and that's why I keep bringing him on selfishly. But for you as listeners, you're going to get to learn all the inside scoop. Now, Brock, if you have not listened to the episode, he has generated in 2024 $2.3 million with a total crew of 3 people, himself plus 2 other people. They did $2.3 million in septics. You can't doubt that what Brock has done is impressive. And what I love about it is he's so dedicated to his craft. He is so dedicated to becoming the absolute best. And I just want to surround myself with people like that. And I want y'all to listen to people like that. So Brock is going to break down how to estimate a septic system. We're going to go through it in this. So stick around if you are an excavation company and you want to either add on septic services or you're currently doing septic jobs and you're not making any money doing it. Welcome back to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. We got Brock Peel on. He is going to show you how to do an estimate for a septic system. I just got a plan set last night from one of our customers. He's going to take us through 0 to 1, how he would think about this. We are adding a dirt crew here at Bearclaw, and we'd like to focus on septics with the dirt crew. So for this episode, we're just going to focus on estimating. If you stick around the whole time, I'm sure Brock is going to drop a bunch of gold nuggets. Brock is the owner of Canadian Sanitation, and if you have not listened to any of his past episodes, had him on 3 times before, and we just published his latest episode. He and 2 other guys, crew of 3 total, hit 2.3 million in revenue, and it is very impressive. So you're going to get to learn septic estimating from the septic godfather himself. That's what you call yourself, right?
I guess self-awarded by you, but yeah, sure, I'll go by that.
This episode is brought to you by Jobber. Jobber is the all-in-one software management solution specifically for home service and trade businesses. I remember when I was starting Bearclaw several years ago, I was wondering how the heck I was going to send estimates, keep track of a job schedule, send invoices, and collect payment. When I came across Jobber, I felt like I had found the Holy Grail. Jobber makes the back end of my business so efficient, and it saves me time as a business owner. So if you are in the early days of starting your home service or trade business, look no further than Jobber as your software management solution. And if you use our unique link, I get a commission from it. And Lord knows I still have debt to pay down on all this heavy equipment. If you've been enjoying the podcast, this is one way you can support us. Visit go.getjobber.com/OWNROPS. That is go.getjobber.com/OWNROPS. Okay. Let me see if I can pull this up. Do you want to, right now, while I'm finding these, you want to just kind of take a high level? How do you think about septic estimating? Where do you start and what's the process? Overview.
Your first step is know your own cost. That's step 1. Doesn't matter if you're doing a septic or what you're doing. You need to know that you need to know your numbers inside and out. What your daily operating costs are, what your cost is to mobilize, what your cost is for each crew on site or one crew. You need to know what your cost of doing business is for Monday to Friday. That's step 1, is determine your operating costs, your overhead costs, and the profit margins that you're looking for. After that, and that's universal in any business, doesn't matter what you're doing. For septic specifically is knowing your local pricing, so knowing your aggregate pricing, and that's easy to find. Like I quote septics in different areas all the time. I can't do them as fast as I can do locally because I have all of our price sheets, but it's as easy as calling pits, getting a price per ton, price per yard, however you do it, price per meter. However they do it is getting that pricing. You need to know your aggregate pricing. You need to know who your local precaster is or tank supplier. You need to know that pricing, or if it's an advanced treatment system, you need to know the pricing on that. And then really, at the end of the day, once you have all that pricing together, then build out your quote, calculate how much material is required in, how much material required is out, do your baseline costs right across the job. What's my cost to do this, with some contingency on septics for depending on your area for inspections. You need to add time loss for that as well. Once you figured all that out, then look for your, look for your profit margins. What kind of margins are you looking to hit? What's your net gain at the end? And then you're going to take all those numbers, and that's going to give you your final number.
What profit margins do you shoot for in your business?
So we shoot for, on any job, we're generally shooting for 30%. That's kind of our baseline. I say baseline, it kind of depends on the job. When you're looking at larger scale jobs, what we found, again, just from doing a lot of quotes, a lot of estimates. I'm looking at these drawings as I'm talking to you, by the way, too. So, but after doing a lot of estimates, we've learned from jobs that we have been awarded and haven't been awarded that as you scale up, the margins go down, right? And I mean, anybody in the larger scale civil construction can tell you that the margins are tighter with the larger jobs. So that's what we've found, is that it just kind of depends on the job. Like a small job, like a tank replacement, we might run a 40-50% margin on that, just because of there's the I guess for me, I call it the fuck around factor. It's a small job, but it takes the same amount of brain power and time for me to execute it and plan it and get it done. I still have to do a design. I still have to deal with the customer just as much. I still have to mobilize my equipment there and back and everything. So I kind of add a little bit of an X factor there for my time. I'm not interested in making, say it's an $8,000 job. I'm not interested in making 25 to 30% on an $8,000 job. I need to make more, or it's not worth me doing that $8,000 job. That's just my logic. There's a time to mobilize, and I find pricing a tank replacement and doing the design and permit process is the exact same amount of work for just a tank as it is for a whole septic. So certain things like that, I kind of adjust my margins there.
Sweet. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what would you say like a small job is? Less than 10K?
Small job would be probably less than 18, less than 15 or 16, 15 to 18K would be a small job.
So you're shooting for 40 to 50% margin on anything less than 15?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's going to give you a markup of about like a 40% markup gives us generally a 30% margin typically. So on essentially across the board on a smaller job, we're going to have a higher markup, closer to 60-70% on a small job. And that's, going to give us a higher margin, just because, again, small jobs, we find that they take the same amount of back end time as large jobs.
Yeah, understood. Now, one thing I want to clear up, and you and I have never really specifically talked about this. So like I view profit markup as specifically profit, like when I do my estimates. I also have an overhead number that I tack on to every job, and that overhead covers things like my salary to do estimating, or if you have an estimator or a project manager, like that's where like salaries go into that overhead calculation. How do you do it in your business? Because like the reality is you're wearing a ton of different hats. And so when you say markup, is that all encompassing of your profit and overhead, or do you separate those two out?
No, I look at my markup. So like my markup is going to be, and again, I'm not a complete expert on defining these, I guess would be the best way to put it. And maybe explaining the exact difference, but markup for me is directly across the board. So I would look at my total cost to do the job, and so my overhead is worked into that total cost, right? So my overhead on that job, what it costs for me to run my business, that's what I put in my cost to do that. When I look at excavation or I look at labor, I put that into the job, right? So I have a daily operating cost. I have a daily operating cost for us that I know what it takes for us to operate. And again, when you're smaller, this is a lot easier to do. As you get bigger, that's where you start to lose track a little bit, because you can't if you're running 5 crews, you need to identify multiple crews, and you need to know, some crews may have a higher yield. They have a higher cost because they have a different set of equipment. They have a different set of skills, that crew. So then you need to look at which crew is going to be attached to which job and what that's going to cost. For us at the scale that we're at, which is really nice, is that we're essentially running 2 crews, at all times, even 3 guys. And a lot of times it'll just be myself or my partner doing a job on our own, and then myself or him with our other lead operator doing it together, or one of them on one job and one of them on another, and then I'm in the office or quoting or designing. So essentially, we carry that operating cost straight across the board. And this is something that I do personally, and it just works for me. We have 2 crews. In an ideal world, we have 2 septics going on at the same time. I base all my quotes on if we don't. I base all my estimates on if my entire team, if all of us are on that site at that time to get that job done. So if I think it's a 5-day job, I know my operating cost a day, and that's what I'm accounting for on my cost to do that job. And if I can have 2 septics on the go at one time, and we can get more done at one time, then that's a benefit to us, not my client, right? So
Sure.
that's a perk for us, because the problem with the septics is, and I don't know down there as much for inspections, but we have a lot of inspections. So you can put 10 guys on a septic if you want, and you're just going to be done that day at maybe 11 o'clock instead of 3 or 4 o'clock, but you still can't get your inspection until the next day. So pounding manpower to the majority of septics is not really beneficial. Like I've done many septics completely on my own. And that's why it's, we did so well this year, is that I was doing septics, I was doing advanced treatment systems and, a crane coming in, dropping in tanks, and I'm completely by myself, right? Setting tanks, building the bed, doing everything. With a larger machine, you can do that. So that's the benefit of that. And again, I'm dictated by the inspection. So maybe I got to put in a hard 10-hour day or 12-hour day, but I can't get that inspection to the next day. So if I brought more guys with me, I'd just be done and have to go home for the rest of the day. There's nothing more I can do. That's the thing, is putting more guys to it's not always beneficial. So I use it as if all of us were on that site at one time. That's the way that I base it off of.
What is your daily operating cost?
$2,000 a day. Sorry, I said a drink of water there. So our daily operating cost is about $2,000 a day, Monday to Friday, $40,000 a month. So it does go higher. It does get higher different times of year when we're running more equipment and we're burning more fuel. But for standard operating costs for us, baseline, I base it off $2,000 a day. It may be slightly higher at different times, but again, because I'm using the metrics of majority of the time, all 3 of us are not on the same job, right? I know that kind of ends up, we end up on the better side of it at the end of the day, even if I use 2,000s. That's just my baseline number that I've used, that when I do job costing at the end, that I know that if I base it on 2,000, so if I think it's a 5-day job, my cost to do that, or my cost is say $10,000. So then I can base my excavation costs off of that.
And that's purely for equipment and labor, correct?
Yeah, that's my business in a whole. That's equipment. So we're $2,000 a day to turn keys is the way I look at it. So we're $2,000 a day to get up in the morning and turn a key. That's labor for all of us. That's payments. That's insurance. That's everything minus cost of goods sold, which I consider fuel. I mean, you're not burning fuel. Like I put a fuel factor kind of into everything and into every job, right? So you're not burning fuel unless you're doing work. So I don't really, fuel cost is definitely a factor, but to me, the more fuel I burn, the more work I'm probably doing. So I don't worry about it as much. That $2,000 a day is Monday to Friday for us to get up in the morning and go to work. And that covers our business in a whole. That's everything.
This episode is brought to you by Bearclaw Media. Bearclaw Media is a growth agency for service and trade-based business owners. If you want to grow your business and you offer a high-ticket service in local service or trades, there's a really good chance that we can help you grow with Facebook, Google Ads, and content creation for platforms like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. If you're interested in growing your business, check out gobearclawmedia.com. So you would take your material costs and then you would bid it $2,000 a day?
So I would look at, I'm trying to look at your design. So I have civil, site and soil. I don't see, so you got soil analysis. I'm just trying to zoom in on your one picture here. So this is a infiltrator system, 1,500 gallon concrete tank. Got a DB box, full gravity, which is nice. 90 quick 4 infiltrators, 4x22. Okay, this is in metric too. That's nice. So you got dual pods. The way that they've done this is kind of strange. Have you got a count on the, so it says 90 chambers. Have you got a count on this? Do you know any of your pricing on this down there in Austin?
I could pull it up for you real quick.
Okay, well, I can do it. You know what? Let's do it. I'll do it on my jobber. I'll do it on my cost, what I pay for stuff.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it on my cost because I have all that stuff in there because we use chambers as well.
Are you able to share your screen?
Let me try that. Can you see my screen?
Yep. All good.
Okay, so let's go with, first thing I'm going to do is figure out what I need. So for us, it's going to be a 1500. Okay, now I'm just getting your infiltrators. So this here, so tank and dispersal pipes, I normally just loop that into one. So then I know, I'll go in and add my cost. I know that tank cost, so I'll add in here 1500 gallon concrete, 1500 gallon concrete. Okay, an F1 filter. I'll double check just to give you exact. I would normally just probably ballpark a little bit. So my cost on that tank is going to be $29.2807. But then I know I've got an F1 filter. We got some pipes. So if you look at design, you got 40 feet of pipe down there to your divider, and then down to your leaching bed. So for me, you're probably looking at 100 feet of pipe. So for us, you're going to be you're around $1.50 a foot, so you're probably $150. I usually carry with an effluent filter. I generally just carry for a simple system that doesn't require a lot of pipe and fittings. I normally just carry about $400 or $500 across the board for that. So if I know I'm around $2,900 for that, I'm going to go in at $3,400. So typically for a 1,500 gallon tank, by the time I throw it, comes with the risers. It comes with standard risers and lids, and normally safety lids in an effluent filter. So I'll carry, say $500 across the board. So I'm going to put my cost in at $3,500 or $3,400 for that, and I'll put my 40% markup on that. And I can play with that. I can play with that figure because sometimes, again, if my clients are listening, this probably wouldn't be the best, but quoting sometimes can be a bit of an art depending on who you're dealing with. Sometimes a homeowner seeing how much you're charging for excavation may bother them versus they don't know the cost of the tank. But when you're dealing with a builder, he can quickly reference the cost of the tank. So if you're going to tell him that a $3,000 tank, you're charging him $8,000 for, but you're charging him $7,000 for excavation, he's going to go, oh, okay, well, I'll just buy the tank then. And, he's going to beat you down on that. And you're like, well, I was charging a 150% markup on the tank to, make my quote look better for excavation, but you should have carried it across in the excavation. So there's two sides to that. Some people say you should just carry it 40% across the board. Again, sometimes I kind of just gauge my client a little bit, and I'll just kind of play with the quote a little bit to try and make it look, again, at the end of the day, they're only looking at the number at the bottom, but that excavation price to actually do the labor sometimes can be a little bit frightful to people. Okay, so I'm going to I was just looking at your design there, seeing if there's, from your tea time report, it looks like you're in a sandy, loamy soil. So this is just infiltrator trench bed. Doesn't look to be any requirements for any imported material. Have you done septics in this area, Austin? Do you know the standard practice for base layer? Because sometimes there's the building code and then there's what's the most common in that area. If there's a standard practice they're looking for, if they're looking for a clear stone or anything underneath the chambers.
Yeah, I literally just got these plans last night, so I haven't read through this septic design, but usually they'll call it out and they'll tell you whether or not the native is sufficient or whether we have to over excavate and bring in fill. If it doesn't say anything about over excavation, then we should be good with the native. But this specific area that we are digging in, I had a friend build over there, and it was all good free draining material. Let's see. Okay, so this design that you've sent to me, so this is just a standard, this system would be about as easy as they get. Just a standard trench bed system. You can probably do in just an open cut for it, meaning that you just dig the hole wide open instead of doing the trenches. Depending on the size of the machine that you have, just open it up, lay your chambers, and then fill it all back in, obviously with your microfiber cloth over top of the chambers. You don't require any imported aggregates on this. There's no, it's an absorption trench. There's no filter bed. There's no filter sand requirements, anything like that. Really, all you're gonna account for is possibly some topsoil. I'm not sure out there if you guys, it looks pretty dry, so I don't know if grass and topsoil is something that you normally do. Is that common out there? Not in this location. It won't be. This is like a sagebrush hill.
Okay. So I can probably cut back the aggregate. So I'd probably put in, for me, I try and account for a little bit of aggregate. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. Great. But maybe we'll keep it at around, say $800 worth of aggregate just for the tank. You might go dig the tank and you might not like the base layer and you might want to bring in a triaxle clearstone. We don't always bring in clearstone for the tank, just depending on what kind of ground that we're digging. If you're in good hard pan, you hit good ground and you can get a nice dig, then there's no point in importing. And if it's good sandy material. Okay, so I base this off my pricing. If you're looking at the quote right now, I've got my tank cost at $3,400 with effluent filter, safety lids, things like that, and some pipe, and some fittings. I got these Low Pro 24 chambers. For us, our cost would be at $42, around $42 a piece. Actually, I got to put end caps on there as well. So I'll just carry $5 a piece for end caps. So I'll up it to $47 just to carry for the end caps because they're expensive. So I got it $47 with a 40% markup for your infiltrator chambers at 90 units. Now, this system, again, I don't know your inspection process there. I think I seen there it says open cut is all you need, and probably a final. This type of system, you could realistically do it, honestly, with a large machine. Like you could do this in a day if you had no inspections whatsoever. Maybe it'd be a long day, but for sure 2 days. Just because of the inspection process, I would account for 3 days on this system to do it. Again, I'm going to carry 4. The reason I'm going to carry 4 is 1, contingency, and 2, I likely don't have something to fill the rest of my week, maybe with that crew 100% efficiently, right? There's a mobilization, there's mobilization time for me to mobilize, to get there, complete the job, and to mobilize out of there. I likely couldn't do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, put guys and be 100% efficient Thursday and Friday. So when I'm doing my excavation costs, I'm going to base it on 4 days. I'm not going to get greedy and say 5. I'm going to have to find something for them to do, or likely have another site on the go. But just to play it safe, if I know it's going to take me for sure 3 days with an inspection, I'm going to account for 4. So I have my excavation cost there at $8,000. That's our cost. Again, that's if every guy on my crew is on that site. That's the only job we have on the go. With a 40% markup on that. I get a little bit of aggregate in there at $800 for the aggregate with a 40% markup. And then obviously my terms and conditions. That brings me to a subtotal of $23,002, tax in price of just under $26,000, with a estimated margin of 28.57%. So 40% markup generally is going to put you at just around a 30% margin.
Okay, super straightforward. And let's go back down to the tank and dispersal. Let's see. I have an old quote pulled up here. I just want to see, how much are the infiltrators per?
My cost on them was $47. This is in Canadian dollars, so you're going to be a lot different than me. Our dollar is not worth anything, and I'm sure it's going to take another plummet after today.
What would 47, let's see, 7 Canadian dollars. 47 Canadian dollars would be 32 US. Is that right? Makes
sense, yeah.
So I think our pricing, like we live in a mountain town, so I was just looking at our infiltrators. It's like $43 for an infiltrator on the last time I got a quote here.
43 US. Okay. Now these are my infiltrator pricing, might be for the Low Pro chambers as well. They're a little bit cheaper. A lot of times we run the Low Pros. These are the quick 4s. 36s, so I'd probably have to get, so these are the 34s, so I'd have to reach out for pricing on those because we don't put a lot of those in. So I just based mine off our Low Pro chambers.
Striker Digital specializes in SEO services specifically for local service businesses. Bodie and Andy, the 2 co-founders, have helped me get Bearclaw Land Services to the #1 search result on Google inside my state for my specific search term. If you want to learn more, visit strikerdigital.com. That's STRYKER-digital.com.
How we do this is I will just send this design to our tank precast company, and they'll price everything out for us. So essentially what you did is tank and dispersal pipes. I'll just get that price. I'll plug it in there. And what's your recommendation for listeners here? on what to add for markup on the material?
It'd be 40%, like, is going to be your standard across the board. If you work out all your costs and everything and you're accurate, the biggest thing is being accurate with your costs. So if you're accurate with your cost, then your markup's going to be sufficient, right? I mean, you can put 100% markup, and if you don't know your numbers, it's not going to do anything for you. And that's also going to come with time, with knowing how long it's going to take. Like, I would say my excavation rates have probably gone up, because I've realized how much time we actually end up burning on each job. Like, I would look at that and be like, oh, that's a 3-day job. That's a 3-day job. But realistically, we try and be as efficient as we can, but realistically it takes 4 days of our time or 5 days of our time. Like, it burns a week. So I need to account on that. Like, even though hours in, it might be 3 or 4 days, I need to account on that burning a week. So I need to take that into account, whether I pass that off to the customer, which, you try to, but I need to account for that when I quote it, right? So that may be where you're going to be higher than some guys. Like, for someone like us, and if we've done more systems than somebody else, or we have a higher operating cost, we may be more expensive than somebody else, because we realistically know, they say, oh, well, that's a 3-day job, I'm going to charge $5,000 for that, because I'm happy to get $5,000 for me and my mini for 3 days. But I know that guy's going to be there a week, because he's going to miss an inspection. The inspector's not going to show up, or he's not going to come till 3:00 in the afternoon, right? Like, you got to look at averages across the board. So that's the way that we do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important lesson, right? And especially as estimators, man, like a big lesson I had to learn in the first year is, like, one, I think eating a slice of humble pie and just being like, okay, I think it's going to take us 3, but then doing jobs and then realizing that there's just a whole extra day normally in either mobilization, like getting equipment ready. Like, one little thing goes wrong and it throws a half a day addition to the job. And yes, more time in business, like, you get more experience and you eliminate those things, but I really think you got to account for that stuff, otherwise you go out of business really quickly.
Yeah, and I think as well, Austin, for you, one thing I would say, if you're looking, to do this, is I think that one step you can skip. You're going to take these drawings and you're going to send them to the precaster, and you're going to have them interpret the drawings and put you together a price sheet. For one, I do that with some larger, with some larger jobs, when they're all custom and everything's custom. But I would just, for your own, going forward for yourself, if you're quoting, having those numbers on hand yourself and keeping complete record of that, so you don't need to do that every time, that's gonna speed up one step. Because if you got to get the drawings, you got to send it to your precaster, and then you're going to get them to send it back to you. You're probably adding at least 48 hours or 72 hours to the time. Then you need to look at that and interpret it, and you may get lazy one time and just plug that number in, and you haven't actually looked at what they've itemized, or if you know yourself. I've had that happen to me before. I'd like to pull up a design quickly while I'm talking to you, one that I just quoted. It's a $400,000 one. It's a big one. And another one I looked at the other day, and I got a price from a precaster, and there was $15,000 worth of charges on there that weren't accounted for, that I caught, and that would have really hurt me. The tanks were $100,000, so $15,000 additional that wasn't accounted for would definitely hurt me on that job. So, and speed is going to be your friend, right? If you can get things back faster, that's going to be your friend. Like, I can quote something on site, because I know the cost of everything, right? I have it in my software already. I know what that precaster charges. So most guys around us, and I'm going to likely say anybody, is going to have a standard cost per year. They might change it. They'll send out some information if they do, but we have price sheets from all of our precasters. Like, we have price sheets from all of our precasters for each year. So I have a 2024 installer for, say, Newmarket Precast, who we deal primarily with, Waterloo, Biofilter. I get 2024. I now get my 2025 pricing. So I go through and I update all my pricing when I get that, and that's my pricing for the year. So I can just carry that. I can just carry that right across.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. Now, we've covered this in past episodes, but it costs you $2,000 a day to operate. Can you break down for our listeners just how to think about that and how you came up with that cost?
Okay. Let's backtrack on that. So I know it's based more on like a monthly cost. So I know that, say, our costs, our equipment cost are, say, $9,000 I have this all written down somewhere, but our equipment costs, our payment costs a month is around about $9,000 a month for payments. Payroll total cost, I believe is around, I think we're around 18,000 for the three of us. Say 18,000 for the three of us. Marketing cost. So right now I got 9,000 in equipment, 18,000 in payroll, 4,000 in marketing, website, SEO, all that stuff. I got $1,000 for insurance. So that's putting me total right now at 32,000, around 32,000 for the month. I know there's something else I'm missing. It's on my that's on my spreadsheet. So I know that we sit around that 32 to 35 hard costs. And then you're going to have at minimum another, say, 1,000 a week of soft costs, which may be fuel, shit breaking, you know what I mean? Like just like random stuff that you need, office supplies, different things. So that's why for me, if I'm at the 32, 35, I'm just going to carry 40,000. So I know that for me, it's 40,000 for three of us, it's 40,000 a month, right? To carry that across the board. So that puts me at, 2,000, that's 10,000 a week, 40,000 a month. If I carry that, then that'll cover us. Very, 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 very simple. Like I'm kind of the mindset of like, I very much try and keep things as simple and almost as dummy proof as I can. Like I don't, I don't have Excel sheets that spread miles long with equations that, I couldn't solve in my wildest dreams. I'm pretty simple when it comes down to it. Business is generally simple, money in, money out. That's how it works. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist. I know a lot of people that are not very intelligent to run, or they don't seem very intelligent to run very good businesses. And, some of the best accountants in the world can't, manage their own money. So it's just trying to keep it simple. So for me, the way that we are is I use round numbers. I keep it simple. We definitely track things. I have a bookkeeper, I have an accountant, they give me quarterly updates, things like that. And I kind of get a clear understanding of roughly where I'm at. If I think I'm hitting a 30% and I look at my, my financial reports and I'm at 5, well, then I'm going to, reassess my numbers. But if I know I'm hitting those, milestones roughly. And again, it's just using those round numbers and keeping it simple. Like my equipment is this much, my payroll is this much, my marketing is this much, my insurance is this much. I burn, say, roughly this much on fuel. Add a contingency. Don't play it tight. Playing it tight's never going to be your friend, right? So that's how I've done it.
Sweet. Could you do one quick scroll on that quote that you put together?
Oh, yes.
For us?
Sorry.
And we'll do then we'll stop the screen share.
Okay, well, I got to that. Let me show you the design. Yeah, so this one, okay, I'll give you, I forgot you do YouTube on this. Okay, so right here on this quote for the tanks, you can see I have everything there for the tanks. Infiltrator ATL units, 486. They're 10-foot length, so 5,000 feet of them, 128,000. I'm very proud of this quote actually, because I know I'm right on, and I'm right within the region of a lot of really big players that have been in the business a lot longer than us. So this quote I was pretty happy with, and I've already been told from the GC who's bidding on this project, if they get it, we're doing it. So this might be a job for this year. So I've accounted my clean fill, right, $550 a load. Excavation, $72,000, and then I've added an optional line item for land prep to remove and dispose of trees required in the septic area. A guy like you would probably go in there and do that for probably half that price, because it's a very small area and you got all the equipment for it, but I make sure I charge good money for it because I don't really like doing it.
If you haven't signed up for the weekly newsletter yet, go to ownerops.com/newsletter. That's OWNROPS.com/newsletter. We summarize all of the learning lessons from the interviews with the guests on the podcast, and we distill those into short, actionable tips, tricks, tactics, and strategies that you can use to grow your own local service business. Sign up for the newsletter at ownerops.com. That's OWNROPS.com.
So yeah, thanks for putting that together for us. So you can do this in your sleep, basically. So your recommendations that I took away from that is, I'm now going to reach out to our precast company. I'm going to get all of the unit pricing, and I'm just going to add that into Jobber. That way we have all the pricing saved. And when we get these quotes, or opportunities to bid. That way myself or our project manager can go in and boom, 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 put these quotes together pretty quickly. I think where there's discrepancy here, or where the art comes in, to your point, is one, knowing your crew. Two, I guess first, knowing your costs right there, which we've already covered, but two, knowing the rate at which your crew can move. And then three, being able to just account for, those little things that just come up. So I heard you say like, hey, realistically, I think I could do this 3 days. I'm going to charge 4 and maybe even consider charging for 5. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, and exactly learning that with your crew, learning what they're capable of and not capable of. I think, and like, yourself, I think that's been a big thing for us, is learning what we're not capable of, where, you look at a job and you're like, that's a 3-day job because we've done that one time in 3 days and everything went so perfect and the inspector was there and we wanted them and everything just went great. But looking at it over a whole, after you do, 45 septics a year, right? You do 2 years, we've done, 80 septics or, whatever, and looked at 1,000 of them, is that, you realize that that's not realistic. So I think carrying that, I think that's the most important part, is actually knowing how long it's going to take you and carrying that contingency. And for me, the way that I look at it is that my efficiency is for my gain, not my clients. There's also like, there's a factor when you get really good, you can possibly be a little bit more competitive. Like now you can be a little bit competitive with your pricing. But again, if I hold my pricing straight across the board, if I said forever, I'm going to, it's 5 days, and I generally use this rule of thumb for the most part, like 5 days, like every system to me is a week. It doesn't matter, generally until it gets really large, but most systems I can do in a week, whether it's small or big, whether it's 6 loads or 30 loads, I can probably do it in a week. Again, because of inspections and mobilization time. But if I carry a week across the board and there's some that I get done in 3 days, and I can quickly move to another site and I can get started on it, that's for my gain, right? My efficiency and my operations improvement is for my profitability, not for savings for my clients. And that's the way that I look at it, is that I'm doing it for myself. And the fact that we get better is for our gain. So when you start out, if you actually do take 5 days for every septic, your margins are probably going to be a little bit tighter. And that's where knowing what the market can bear a little bit as well, is that if you're going to be, you need to know what your competition is, roughly where your competition's at. Not that you want to beat them. I would say that given our competition in our local area, we're probably one of the most expensive. And we're busy. So I don't know, it doesn't necessarily mean that, being the cheapest guy gets you all the work, because it doesn't. It's just roughly knowing if everybody else in your area is going to be 15, like that system that I gave you, Austin, we just priced, I'm at 23,000, plus tax for that. So I would say convert that to USD or whatever you're doing. You're probably still going to be around that 20 mark. But if you found, if you heard multiple times, or you talked to clients, or you had other people price that job, and you found that 2 guys were 12,000, 1 guy was 15, and 1 guy was 18, then you're going to realize that you're probably grossly overpriced. So there's something that you need to do to improve. You don't want to be in there with the $12,000 guys, but you want to be kind of somewhere right in the middle. So there's something that you need to do. So if you're pricing it at your operating costs at 5, 6, 7 days to do it, then unfortunately, until you can get to a point to where you can do it in 3 days, you probably need to take a little bit of a hit, and you're going to make less money. Like, we definitely make more money now after all the experience that we have on the systems that we do, because we're doing them a lot faster and more efficiently. So that's kind of, that's part of it. And that's how we can be competitive as well.
Cool. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Well, thanks for walking us through this. I know this is going to be helpful for some listeners, and it's definitely helpful for me. Is there anything else that you would recommend to listeners or myself as we are building a dirt crew specializing in septics here? Like, what should we be thinking about going into this?
Really think about your estimating. Really think about your standard costs for things, and like how you're going to make it, easier and faster, right? Like I have standard templates that I know, for me, I base it on kind of volume for, these systems. I've done so many of them that I know what to carry across the board. I have my aggregate cost. That I can just calculate the liters per day. So I put in liters per day if it's a sand or a clay soil, and that's going to spit me out my aggregate price for the most part, and I'll take a look at it, see if it makes sense. I'll still double check it, but it makes it really fast. So I think that's going to be a big thing for anybody for quoting. Is speed is your friend, right? How fast you can do it is going to be your friend. To be one of the first ones in there with a price, that will win you the job a lot of times. Just being the first one with a price and understanding your numbers. That job that I showed you there for that provincial park, it's a $500,000 job. We're within 10,000 of 2 or 3 other quotes that I know of. So we're right in there. Everyone's, and these are large companies. So really understanding your numbers and calculating it. We quoted a job. It's a $1 million. It's a $1 million storm sewer job, private. And we quoted that, and I had a friend of mine who's in the industry. That's his specialty. His bread and butter for the last 20 years has been these storm sewer jobs. He knows his numbers. He has systems. He has engineers on staff that all they do is estimating. So he's very efficient. So I had him help me price a job like that. And again, everyone has someone who helps them. I help people. I help people that are looking to do what I'm doing. And I have people that help me that I'm looking to do what they're doing. That's just life. That's how it goes. So, these little jobs, anything, these septics, anything under 200, 250,000, it's a walk in the park for me. But once we start getting over that, it definitely takes a bit more. I got him to help me price it, and he worked through a price. And my big takeaway from that is he says, okay, this is the price I came up with. This is what I would charge. I wouldn't submit that bid because I didn't understand the number. I didn't get that number. I understood that he was saying I'm going to make money at that number, but I didn't understand how and why. So the big thing is that's the important part, is understand your quote and understand your number. So what I did, he gave me a price of, I think we came to, his price was around $836,000 or $838,000 plus tax for the job. I didn't really understand where he got that. So what I did is I took that as a reference. I used a lot of the pointers that he gave me for calculating things. Like, he had a different way of calculating mass volumes of material, which made things a lot easier for me. And, different standard operating. He had standard operating procedures for pipe. He says, when I do this kind of pipe, I just carry this per meter, per foot, per length of pipe, per manhole, per catch basin, carry this across the board. And I found those very helpful, but he had to get to those at some point. So when I tell you a number, I carry this number, you need to understand why I carry that number. And it's just through experience, the same with him. So I sat down and I spent hours, probably 6 to 8 hours, pricing that job myself the long way, how I would do it, and come up with every single dollar amount. And I looked through those drawings with a fine tooth comb, and I came to 846 or 848,000. So within $10,000 of his pricing, I came to that number through the long way, through my way. So then now I could take the practices that he gave me, and now I understood them because now I understood the numbers. So I think, again, that's a really long-winded answer to your question, but I think if I'm giving you advice if I can't just listen to the quote, you need to understand why.
Well, I appreciate all of your help and insight. I've already had a ton of good feedback on your episode that just released yesterday. So we're recording this one February 1. This one's not going to publish. It's probably going to be like 8 weeks with what we have in the queue. But the one that we recorded at the beginning of the year, published yesterday, I've already gotten a lot of good feedback on. So thanks again for just being a continuous guest on the podcast. What you're doing is incredible up there. I'm thankful to have you on board here to share some of your knowledge with our listeners, because I know that people have told me that they've gotten a lot out of listening to those. So thanks again for being on, Brock.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me again.
Cool. All right, listeners, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. Once again, this is Brock Peel with Canadian Sanitation. You can go check out a couple of the other episodes. We've had him on 3 times, published the last one where he shared the story about the year of 2024, where they hit 2.3 in revenue. That was published January 31st. So go back and check out that episode. If you do enjoy this type of content, please leave us a 5-star review. Podcast reviews are super important for us, and we sure appreciate it. We're on Apple and Spotify, and if you're listening on YouTube, sure appreciate a like and subscribe. You'll get notifications about whenever we drop the episodes. And then finally, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, We summarize all of these episodes, send a weekly newsletter on Saturday mornings. You can sign up on the new Owner Ops website. That's ownrops.com/newsletter. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, never settle for less.